All right, all right, all right, all right, all right. What's up, everybody? My people in Manhattan, the Bronx, Queens, all the way to Staten Island, my homeborough, Brooklyn. Back out with another video. Today marks the 50th anniversary of perhaps the greatest horror film ever made and greatest slasher film ever made, a film that changed the genre and impacted American pop culture, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It was released on this day in 1974. It's considered by many as probably the first modern-day slasher film in terms of the tropes we think about in slasher movies, like a group of friends. You have the clean-cut girl who ends up being the final girl. You have the sexually promiscuous couple. You have maybe the jock who's probably the final girl's love interest or boyfriend or whoever. You have a big 6'5", quiet, silent but deadly figure. It all started with this. It all arguably started with this film right here, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, with Leatherface and the final girl being Sally Hardesty, and so on and so forth. But I'll touch on what films were influenced by this movie later on in this video. But first, I want to go through this. I'm not gonna lie to you. When the first time I saw this, I like horror movies. My father's a big fan of horror movies. He got me interested in some of them as a kid. But the first time I saw this movie, this is probably like the first horror film I remember seeing as a kid that kind of freaked me out a little bit. Even more so than like Halloween or, Friday the 13th Part 4, anything like that, Candyman, anything like that, The Exorcist. This movie probably freaked me out more than anything. Because, and if it freaked me out, can you imagine how freaked out people were back when it was first released in 1974? I mean, film today and film back then it's two different types of cinema. But here you have the iconic introduction. You hear the narrator. You see the film which you're about to see is an account of a tragedy which befell a group of 5 youths. I'm not gonna read the whole thing. The events of that day were to lead to the discovery of one of the most bizarre crimes in the annals of American history, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You hear that iconic camera flash sound, and you see the title card. Yeah, I mean, like I said, one of the most iconic films in the history of cinema. From this introduction to the characters and how it changed cinema. I mean, look at this opening sequence. Imagine how freaky that is. And you see, here's the group of guys, the group of friends. Sal. I don't know if you guys can see Sally, but Sally's the one above this brother right here. This guy right here in the blue shirt. I believe his name is Kirk. But the guy in the wheelchair is Sally's brother. I believe his name is Franklin. The girl in the middle is Pam. The one driving is a guy. His name is Jerry, I believe, if I remember correctly. And the reason they look so freaked out is because they're talking to this weirdo right here, this hitchhiker who they picked up. Well, he began to act crazy and assaulted Sally's brother, and they ended up kicking him out of the van. Later on, they stopped at a gas station, and later they stopped at a house. They were stopped at his house, and Kirk and Pam wandered off. While Sally, Jerry, and Franklin searched the house, Kirk and Pam wandered out to this white house, which turned out to be Leatherface's house. Kirk, for some reason, decided to go in the house, where he ran into Leatherface, one of the most iconic shots from this legendary horror flick. He trips and falls. He sees Leatherface comes out. Leatherface bops him over the head. He falls to the ground unconscious, and Leatherface slams the door. Pam, and again, another one of the more iconic shots from this movie, the camera follows her into the house from her backside. She goes in the house. And by the way, I want to say this. There were some shots from this movie I wanted to include in this little reel, but I thought if I included them, YouTube would give me a strike or something, for explicit content or whatever. I don't know. So I left some of the shots out. Like that shot where when Leatherface puts Pam on the hook. I left that out. So if you guys are upset about that, I apologize, but I didn't want to I don't know if YouTube was going to give me a strike or something, so I decided to leave it out. But anyway, Pam trips and falls into this freaky ass room with all these, it looks like feathers. See all the chickens in here. There's chickens and skulls, all types of freaky shit. And Pam say, okay, I'm time for me to check out. But it's too late. Leatherface discover her, and again, another iconic shot from the film. her trying to leave the house, and Leatherface grabs her, drags her back in the house, and puts her on a hook. And he gets back to working on Kirk. Later on, Sally, Franklin, and Jerry are wondering where Kirk and Pam went. They're sitting there waiting. Jerry decides to go search, and he stumbles upon the White House. He goes in and he sees this cooler. He opens the cooler and discovers Sally's this body, but Sally's body just jumps up and looks all possessed, starts acting possessed, starts shaking and whatnot. Looks like the Exorcist. Jerry Leatherface hears Jerry and he comes in, bops him over the head and kills him. Freaky Leatherface. I believe his name was Bubba. It's late at night. Franklin and Sally are wondering where the hell Jerry's went, and they say, okay, fuck it, we're gonna go search for them. They grab some flashlights. They began searching the forest, and like I said, when I was a kid, this scene right here freaked me the fuck out. What you're about to see, they're wandering in the dark, and this boom, Leatherface pops up and instantly kills Sally's brother Franklin by digging that chainsaw into him. Sally begins running as Leatherface chases her, and of course, Sally, being the first of her final girl, makes very poor decisions. She runs to the White House, not knowing it's Leatherface's house. He chainsaws the door down. Sally's able to get away. Again, another classic chase scene. And she goes into the gas station where she meets the old man, not knowing the old man is actually on Leatherface's side. He begins beating Sally with a broom and is somehow able to knock her out with the broom. He ties her up and puts her in a pickup truck and take her back to the house. She's tied up, Sally's tied up. You see the hitchhiker, the old man, and Bubba, aka Leatherface, are all enjoying dinner. They're trying to feed Sally to their grandpa and grandma, some freaky shit. Sally ends up escaping, being chased by Leatherface and the hitchhiker. The truck ended up running over the hitchhiker. And a pickup truck sees Sally. Sally hops in the back and drives off. And Leatherface starts swinging his chainsaw around. That's the end of the movie. The horror movie that changed film, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Like I said, one of the greatest and most influential horror films of all time. You consider it the first modern slasher genre. First modern slasher film, pardon me. It's been 40 years. Obviously, this is an old article. Now it's been 50 years. It's been 40 years since the horror film The Texas Chainsaw Massacre debuted. The 1974 classic inspired more than just thousands of horror movies, entire franchises, comic books, video games, and other works that leaped from the artistic foundation that the Texas Chainsaw Massacre laid down. In many ways, this iconic film changed Hollywood horror, perhaps even American culture forever. Yet the reception for the horror classic hasn't always been so rosy. When the movie first came out, several countries actually banned it for its violent content. And one movie critic called the film despicable. Yeah, like I said, it's a freaky ass movie. The first time I watched it, I was freaked out by it. You imagine back in 1974, it's Halloween time. You say, "Hey baby, you want to go see that groovy new movie?" I'm just playing. I don't know how people talk back then. You want to see that new horror flick, Texas Chainsaw Massacre? You go and see it. Nightmares probably for days, weeks, if not months. As you can see here, you can see Leatherface, and right next to you see a picture of Laurie Strode and Michael Myers. Like I said, John Carpenter, the director of Halloween, is on record saying he was influenced by the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Black Christmas, which, is a very underrated horror film, which I'll be covering, also be doing a video on. And it's obvious. Michael Myers, Freddy Krueger, Chucky, Jason Voorhees, all these people were obviously influenced by Leatherface, and those franchises were inspired by the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. I mean, like I said, it was one of the greatest horror films ever made. It was ranked multiple times as the singular greatest horror film ever. Do I agree with that? Probably not. Probably not. I have to sit and think about that. I mean, of course, you got this film, Halloween, I throw in there, Psycho, you got The Exorcist, there's so many great horror films, but, you guys tell me in the comment section, is this the greatest horror film ever, the greatest slasher film ever? Remember, if not, tell me in the comment section down below. Don't forget the like button, subscribe. See you all.